Hello everybody, and the Powerpuff Girls. Released in April 2016, the Powerpuff Girls is a reboot of the 90s show of the same name. This reboot is interesting, to say the least. Now let me just start off by saying that I love the original show, and despite its age, it still holds up. Great characters, animation, art direction, voice acting, it was an all-around great show. And honestly, that's kind of to be expected from the creator Craig McCracken, the man who also created Wander Over Yonder and Fosters.
The Fosters is all new, Monday at 8.
All of his shows really feel like they have a vision behind them, and as if a lot of love and care really went into them. And by the end of the Powerpuff Girls run, it went for 6 seasons in a theatrical film, and it could have gone on for longer. Cartoon Network probably wanted it to go on for longer, considering they were making such a killing off the merchandise. But when asked to greenlight his second season, Craig McCracken said no.
And Chris and I both said, no, I think it's time, it's over with. It had its run.
But how do you make a continuation of a show when even the original creator doesn't want it to continue? Oh, you just don't hire him, okay. So now we have a new Powerpuff Girls. And before the show's release, I was skeptically optimistic. Cartoon Network has made some great reboots in the past, and after all the stuff they've let some of their newer shows do, it seemed like the show was going to be just as good as the original. But as more and more information came out, it became harder and harder to remain optimistic about this show. And once a few episodes finally premiered, we all realized what we had gotten ourselves into.
Wanna hug? OMG! Yes! All returns to nothing. It all comes tumbling down, tumbling down, tumbling down.
Now the first thing you've probably noticed about this reboot is its animation. The original had thick outlines and characters that were sharper and basic, which not only looked nice but helped make an identity for the show, with characters and settings that couldn't have been done anywhere else. This reboot, on the other hand, looks like a cross between Clarence and Johnny Test with a non-existent budget. The modern trend of having thin outlines and roundish characters doesn't really work when you have characters that weren't made for that style. Nothing in this show looks like it was made for this show. The background characters just look like random designs that they had lying around the studio and just threw in at the last minute. And even forgetting the source material, the animation of the show just isn't good. It tries to have action scenes, but I'm forced to put an emphasis on tries, because every single action scene lacks any sort of impact, either because the show flashes something in front of the screen before anything connects, or the animation is so stiff that literally nothing connects. I forget, was it Gynax or Trigger that animated this?
Don't lose your way. Your mind, we have to be as one.
And then I'm brought to all the animation errors of the show. Now, animation errors are inevitable for any cartoon. Really, pause any episode of Steven Universe and watch as your favorite gem turns into an insect. But with that said, wow, what a great effect I did in 2 minutes. Wow, what a nice background you have there. Yeah. And I could understand this a little bit more if this show was hand-drawn, but the entire thing is digital. Meaning that yes, corners are easier to cut, but mistakes are also easier to fix.
You were my right-hand man. Arm. Okay.
But hey, even if the animation isn't good, at least the voice acting's alright. None of the original voice actors for the Powerpuff Girls themselves actually signed on to do this show. Not because they didn't want to do it, but because they weren't even asked to do it. In fact, they were all genuinely heartbroken when they found out the reboot was going on without them.
I mean, when you're in this kind of creative world, I find inspiration every day, and we're just so lucky that we get paid to do what we love.
And I was really hoping that I could come out and say, hey guys, the new voice actresses aren't that bad, but I simply just can't. Nothing against the voice actresses as people or even voice actresses, but they just don't fit the roles. Blossom constantly sounds condescending towards the other girls and is generally really annoying. Bubbles doesn't sound cute enough for the role and honestly just sounds like a bad impression. And Buttercup, well, out of all of the voice actresses, Buttercup definitely is the best one. She definitely comes off as the only person not trying to replicate her predecessor and instead trying to make the character her own. But with that said, her delivery always comes off as nasally and annoyed. But hey, what about the returning voice actors that were asked to come? Well, I'm not sure if this is a coincidence or a look into the production of the show, but none of the returning voice actors sound like they want to be there. And the less I say about the background characters, the better.
Oh, perfect selfie lighting.
Now I understand what they're trying to do with this show. They want to keep the feeling of the original show while also trying to update it for kids today. I understand that, but I don't agree with it in the slightest. Because it's this kind of thinking that gets us products like the Smurfs or the Lorax. Why tell a great story when we can just pander to people and make them think that we're one of them when in actuality we just want to sell you things? See guys, we're hip and cool just like you youngsters, and we also think it'd be radical if you invested your money into this product we sponsored.
And who received the only certified Truffle-a-Tree seal of approval? Mazda.
The Powerpuff Girls wasn't set in 1999 or 2005. Sure, there were pieces of outdated technology, but I highly doubt that the very sight of a rotary phone is going to take anybody out of the story. As if somebody's gonna be watching a movie like, nope, can't relate to this main character, he's got a flip phone. And it's not like I'm upset that they have things like smartphones. If anything, it's a clever change. But doesn't it just show where the writers' priorities were when they made sure to update their phones, and yet everybody on staff thought that giving the girls powers was a great idea? I mean, obviously, it's a fantastic idea. Otherwise, how can we sell this many toys? But at the end of the day, one of the most important things is the characters. And, unlike other times, the producers seemed well aware of the original while writing. The first part of the process for us was to really just figure out who is Blossom, who is Buttercup, who is Bubbles, the producer explained. By developing them as stronger personalities and understanding them more as characters, we are able to write stories that are more relatable to people. I think you connect with them better. And that right there reveals another problem, because by developing them as stronger personalities, all the show has done is flanderize them and make them even more unlikable. Blossom is supposed to be the commander and leader. Now she's just a really uptight and annoying perfectionist who constantly acts like she's above the other girls and is generally unlikable. Bubbles is supposed to be the joy and the laughter. Now she's just a really unlikable brat who the writers have designated as their meme generator. Like literally to the point where she has a meme generator. And then she has a temper tantrum whenever things don't go her way. Who is Bubbles? Buttercup is supposed to be the toughest fighter, or essentially the rash muscle of the group. Now, again, she's completely unlikable and is probably the worst case of this. I guess they wanted to make her the troublemaker of the group. They have her act terribly to anyone and everyone just so she can learn a very obvious moral by the end of the episode. And if you had your hopes up for the supporting cast, well, they're not much better. Even though they brought in some of the old villains, they rarely use them. I understand if you want to pick up where the old show left off, but if you're going to do that, you need to ensure that you have the same tone and the same style as the original. Otherwise, the old villains feel as out of place as they do here. I'm not going to give the writers a medal and pedestal because they did a random Google search for Powerpuff Girls characters. As if I'm supposed to be watching a lot of these episodes and go, you know who Fuzzy Lumpkins is too? Oh my god, congratulations. Oh, truly.
Congratulations! Congratulations! Congratulations!
Congratulations!
Congratulations.
Admittedly, there are a few new characters I actually like. I honestly think Packrat's a pretty cool villain, but then you have the other villains who aren't as cool. Like Manboy is supposed to be an old-thinking type male character who's set into this modern world. Wow, it's pretty impressive that you want to tackle subjects like feminism so early in your show. Well, what are you gonna do with them?
Men.
Great. And I won't act like I don't appreciate the fact that the show's trying to talk about topics like gender identity and feminism, but how am I supposed to take anything you say about feminism seriously when you took out Miss Cerebellum because we felt like Miss Bellum wasn't quite indicative of the kind of messaging we wanted to be giving out at this time? You took out a smart, strong, and independent female character based on appearance alone because you wanted to talk about feminism.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Congratulations!
Congratulations.
And saying that you're going to be a voice that resonates with people is the overstatement of the year. The show's not even done with its first season, and already it's taking fire from a controversy started by the episode Horn Sweet Horn. We did an episode where there's a unicorn. Basically, he starts out as a pony, but he wants to be a unicorn, which is a lie. He was a unicorn the entire time.
What a twist!
He has to go through a transformation and become a unicorn, and there's a lot of subtext to that. Yeah, well, guess what, kids? There's also quite a bit of subtext to the fact that you used a mythical creature as your example. You used an animal found in a zoo as an example. You constantly remind him of the negative repercussions of his transformation, having your example be incredibly irresponsible about the decision, and also maybe the fact that you had him turn into a monster and destroy the city.
I'm a freak.
This is your body, and it's a serious choice.
Got it!
Thoroughly weigh your options.
In my heart, I know I'm a monster.
Presenting an attitude and voice that's going to resonate with people. Also in the episode, there's a Dolly Parton-shaped pickle. Egregious reference aside, I'm very confused as to why this pickle gets boobs and Miss Keen's had hers amputated. But even with all of that, the episodes themselves just aren't good. Ignoring the obvious, there are episodes like Arachno Romance, where the professor gets a girlfriend but is forced to break up with her because she turns into a giant monster whenever she feels love. You know, except for that one time she felt love and didn't turn back. And that other time. You guys are kissing in the middle of a sun-bathed park and yet neither of you feel anything. Probably the defining thing that makes me dislike the show is its unoriginality. And yes, I'll admit that I've accused other shows of this, but the main difference here is that a lot of the shows I'm constantly praising on this channel because of their originality are from Cartoon Network, which makes it even more irritating when the show takes the breadwinner's approach to its writing. As in, let's not do anything we think is funny or interesting, but instead do what this chart says will be found funny and interesting for this demographic. Which is really weird because a lot of the shows on Cartoon Network are the perfect antithesis for this show. Heck, this show kind of violates the network's main principles.
I think a great mistake gets made when a group of adults sits around and says, hey, the kids will like this, that'll be really funny.
Look at other shows on the network. Three bears go about their daily lives, interacting with the world around them. A boy with a magical rock instead of a belly button. A bird and a raccoon person do stuff. Do any of the shows I'm describing to you seem like they're easy to market in the slightest? Of course not. In fact, they probably sound really stupid. But in that case, why are all of these shows so good? Because they weren't made with the thought of what would appeal to demographic X or would sell the most toys to demographic Y. They were made because the people behind them wanted to make art for the sake of making art. When I watch this show, all I can see is a room of businessmen sitting around saying, okay, so what are those kids into these days? Well, I think they like those dank memes, so let's put some of those in.
OMG! Yes! You do it! No me gusta! Remember 2 weeks ago when I made that Mojo meme generator?
Don't they also like those emoji things? Yes, more of that. Kids also like that hip rap music, right? So let's put some of that music in. Like, are putting stuff like rapping and memes into your show inherently bad? Of course not, and I know this because other better shows have used those concepts to great effect. Why should I care about this show when every single thing it does is done better by a different current show? Oh, but this show has memes in it. Yes, but it doesn't use them as cleverly as We Bare Bears. Oh, but this show puts an interesting spin on the Powerpuff Girls, but not as interesting of a spin as Powerpuff Girls Z. Oh, yeah, the Powerpuff Girls had an anime spinoff called Powerpuff Girls Z. It was alright, I guess. It was just kind of a half-baked Sailor Moon without being Sailor Moon Crystal.
Oh, snap.
But this show is a fun superhero story, but not as fun as Miraculous Ladybug or even the original Teen Titans. Oh, but this show is a reboot of a classic property. Yes, but it's not as well done as the Looney Tunes show. Oh, but this show isn't afraid of being controversial, but doesn't know how to do it anywhere near as well as Steven Universe or even Courage the Cowardly Dog. Oh, but this show is the Powerpuff Girls. Yes, but it isn't anywhere near as good as the original. So overall, I would not recommend the new Powerpuff Girls. Really, if I've gained anything out of this entire analysis, well, I think I gained more of a respect for Teen Titans Go. I mean, I still don't like Teen Titans Go. In fact, if I had to re-rate the show with 5 being average, I'd probably rate it 3 or 4 out of 10. But at least with Teen Titans Go, even with its terrible writing, abysmal messaging, bad animation, and terrible writing, at least Teen Titans Go tried something different. It completely crashed and burned at trying to do that something different, but it at least tried it. And that's something I just can't say about the new Powerpuff Girls. And so because of the show's horrible stories, broken animation, weird voice acting, and bad writing, the Powerpuff Girls gets a 3 out of 10. Obviously, there is worse than this show, but everything about this show was not only laid out in specific detail, but it feels like everything this show tries to do is either done better by a current show or the original show. But honestly, I would recommend that you watch any other show on the network over this one. So what's next? The Teen Titans Go Powerpuff Girls crossover? Yes.
Do you think God stays in heaven because he too lives in fear of what he's created? How do you do, fellow kids?